Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. All right, today on the Develop Yourself podcast, I have Zubin, and I'm going to talk about something I've always wanted to ask him about that I can't believe I haven't asked him about off camera, really. Many of you know Zubin's story. He went from lawyer, boot camp, dropped out of boot camp, ends up at Google. Just that simple.
Just that simple. That's
right?
exactly what happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've always been curious because I have gone to Google to the on-site 2 times. I failed miserably the first time, and I actually felt pretty good the second time. I still didn't get the offer, but it was always a mystery. I'm like, who are these geniuses cracking the Google interview? So today I want to talk about how you studied for Google interview, how you got the interview, the actual interview process, and a lot of the myths around interviewing that I think people need to hear, because there's a lot of bad advice, outdated advice, just things that aren't true for the majority of software developers. Like, most of us study for these 1% of companies, like they're the 99% of companies, which I see as a big issue. But tell me, Zubin, just take me step one, man. Like, how did you get an interview at Google, first of all?
Come on, Brian, you can Google this. There is only one step. You do approximately 3.2 million LeetCode questions per week. That's it.
I knew it.
That's how
I knew it.
Google.
I knew this was what I was missing. Jeez. Show's over.
Look, seriously, the short version is I optimized for Pareto's principle, the 20% that was likely to give me 80% of my outcomes, right?
Okay.
Now, that means nothing, because that's a very fancy shorthand way of saying I did the few things that matter. The big thing is what matters. And here's something, I mean, I've talked about this on my interview with Clement Miliscu as well on Algo Expert, right? So Algo Expert was about a year or two then. LeetCode, old. It was a year or two old then. And LeetCode, I don't know, was 5, 10, 15 years. I have no idea how old. But LeetCode was the dominant
thing, right?
Thing,
Yep.
You know, and still continues to be. In popular speaking, it's like, you know, LeetCode is kind of like the generic catch-all term for DSA, right? It's a brand, but it's become like this catch-all generic thing for talking about that. And in my interview with Clement, I said I did about 40% of what's there on Algo Expert. Not 100%,
Okay.
Not even 80%. I did 40%. And I still managed to make it into Google. Now, right up front, this is not just about smarts, because I'm not particularly smart compared to the average Google applicant, okay? I also got lucky, because on the day, all the people who are better than me didn't show up. Not that I don't even know if they applied. I just know that a lot of the world is smarter than me, and none of them seem to have showed up on that day. Maybe they didn't see the job listing. I don't know. But so much of this is luck, okay? And people say, all right, well, you know, you got lucky with this and that. Well, you know, I'm also not American. I'm not in the Bay Area. I was in Australia. I was born in India. Everybody's got luck, and this is how luck plays into a life. You know, as Warren Buffett calls it, you know, you have the ovarian lottery. The family you born in is how you start off with luck. So luck counts in everything. If you want to know the actual step-by-step process, do you want me to go through what I did? I've talked about this extensively on. I did a long article on Freecode Camp about this as well, and I did not focus on the technical stuff, because, you know, my philosophy on this is the technical stuff is, you can't skip around it. It's the ticket to the done, right? It's the table stakes. So I did a huge article on Freecode Camp on all the other stuff that makes the technical stuff come through almost automatically. Like, it will come through, you know, but I can walk you through my thinking. Would that help?
I would love to. Yeah, because I think for a lot of people, it's a bit of a mystery. Like, they get an interview, right? And or they hear about a place like Google, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, all the places that make up FANG, this acronym that basically encapsulates all the top, 1% of engineering organizations in the world. And they're like, I want to go there. And then they do something like, I'm going to study 500 LeetCode problems, or they just blindly go on LeetCode. And obviously this doesn't work. If this did work, we'd have a lot more people getting in. The pass rate is something like less than 1% of people that apply are going to get in.
Yeah.
It's less than Harvard.
Yeah.
And people just generally have a really hard time with these interviews. You've beat it. And so, I'm curious, like, what was your approach at a high level to be like, okay, I have the interview coming up. How am I going to study the time period it took you?
So I had a slight advantage in that, because I grew up in India and I went to law school in the 90s, I knew that there were different types of intake systems. And this is where my analysis started off. What kind of intake system am I dealing with here, right? So at Google, like you said, it's DSA based, but it's not just about whether you can crack the coding interview. It's also about, can you fit into the team? Do you understand technology? Do you understand engineering? Do you have the right mindset and personality? Now, how do I know this is really important at places like Google? Is because I've been on the interviewing side at Google too. While I was there, I was interviewing, and I was trained a lot to be an interviewer and things like that, right? And so you see the emphasis that different companies, especially FANG, especially modern big tech, they place a lot of emphasis on more than just the technical skills.
Okay.
Does not mean that your technical skills don't have to be up to scratch. Again, it's a filtering stage, right? If it's a hard no at that, doesn't matter how great you are on other metrics, you're not going to make it. But if you're good enough at the DSA, and you've seen this in your interviews as well, whether at FANG or otherwise, you don't always have to smash the technical challenge out of the park.
Yeah.
You just have to be good enough to not raise red flags.
Okay.
You don't have to do the best thing. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. I just had an interview where this was the case. I didn't actually complete it, or I completed it with significant help with the other engineer. And I have an offer, kind of a standing offer, and in the job I'm at currently, that's exactly was my experience. I did pretty well on the technical side, but I didn't knock it out of the park, you could say.
Right. And so I would say, just from your own experience, let's examine that, because I think it is a template for other experiences, right? You're an engineering manager. Why do you think it was that you, despite needing help, and it sounds like a bad thing, but it may not be, it probably isn't. Despite so much collaboration with your interviewer, you still managed to get through, and you have the standing offer. From an engineering manager's point of view and a hiring manager's point of view, why is it important that collaboration happen?
Well, that mimics the actual experience of working with somebody, right?
Exactly.
It'd be one time I had a person I was interviewing and they were actually doing pretty well, but I tried to offer them a suggestion and they just kind of shut me up. And that was a massive red flag, because I'm like, it's great that you can code well. There's a lot of people that can code well, right? Like everybody that's going to come through, I expect that they can code their way out of a paper bag, or even code beyond that they can code at a better than average level. But you're right. Like if they are really difficult to work with and they can rot the team from the inside out, then what would be the benefit of hiring them?
That's a hard no. Yeah, exactly. No. And also people perform differently in different interview circumstances. So you could have someone who's very good, given the time and the space, to solve the problem. But because of all the dynamics of an interview environment, there's a power asymmetry, there's a nerve, all of that. A good interviewer will be sensitive to that, and say, okay, this person is probably not performing well in these artificial lab kind of circumstances.
Yeah, right.
How do I tease it out of them? How do I figure out what they actually perform? Now, a good interviewer do that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you've done FANG interviews as well. What do you think was the surprisingly hardest thing for you in that experience, right? What was it unexpectedly hard for you?
One of the hardest things was not using an actual programming language, like writing out the logic without a compiler to actually see if the code would run. The other hard part was the matching, the pattern matching. Like you get like an abstract problem, and then I felt like, if I understand the interview correctly, is to match it to some sort of common data structure or algorithm that you can then say, oh, this kind of fits into this, and explain the process, then work through it. So that sometimes is difficult. Like, for example, I chose to use some problem. I was like trying to do something with an array when it would have been much better as a linked list. And there's a two-step process too to the problems. I know at Google where you're expected to get the answer correct, and then there's an additional step to the answer that you should get to. And I knew when I was failing at like the one or two interviews, I'm like, I didn't do that second part of the question. But that was surprising. It's the whole, like, first of all, it was open too. That was a big surprise too. Like they kind of tell you what to expect. And knowing that I could kind of gauge myself when I was failing or doing well within the interview.
Yeah. And so now this is where I talk about understanding the filter system that you're working with, right? So the reason I had some experience of this, even before I entered the workforce in 2003, was when I finished high school and I was going to law school. I applied to a college in India that had, this was 1998, a law school, which is, considered to be one of the best there, and it was incredibly cheap too. I can add, like, it was just a beautiful institution, just a legendary institution. Mm-hmm. And there were 35,000 or 36,000 people that applied that year, and I think 57 or 60 or something get in on merit. Like tiny. We're talking about 0.15%. Okay. And again, that system in India trained me to understand filtering systems. Okay. Now in that system, there's no interview. and there's no legal reasoning. Oh, sorry, no legal test and all that. Things have changed now, but and this is the other thing. As the market matures, the filters get more mature, right? So back in 1998, the filtering system was a 3-hour entrance test in a room, no interviews, and they tested a bunch of different things. And there were only so many ways you could prepare for it because it was such a new university and it was doing so well and it was so new that there was no long-standing track record of prep material available, right? So you kind of had to figure it out. Okay, see, they'll give you an example of past exam and you have to use your power of reasoning to say, what do I need to study for this to optimize, right? So that was my first hardcore training in a very competitive country of 1 billion people to get into this thing that accepts 60 people but gets 35,000 applications every year, right? And that taught me the filtering process. There are different processes. Now, you mentioned something really important. You said in your coding interviews, what was surprising at the Google one, for example, was not using an IDE necessarily or a specific programming language, right? The reason that is surprising for most people is because they think, thanks to books like this, that there is only one interview. There you go. We've all got it. I've never read it.
Yeah.
Completely, never read it.
Yeah.
Pristine condition. Never read it. No dog ears, no nothing, right? And actually, it's not true. I read an online PDF for a little while, and that's when I realized, because I was just sitting there, I said, okay, let me start. And I had the book, and I never read it after I read the online PDF, because no shade on the book. The book is fantastic.
Yeah, right? An excellent book.
The content is spot on from what little I could see, but I couldn't see how I could prepare for this with this.
And by the way, and for those listening that aren't seeing it, the book we're talking about is Cracking the Coding Interview, by the way. It's a massive book. It's super famous, and we both have a copy of this in case you're listening to this and can't see us.
And if you Google it, this is like the phrase. Okay, this was the first OG in the space about getting into big tech and fancy sort of tech companies. And Gail McDowell, absolute trailblazer. Hats off to her for doing this book. It's genuinely a phenomenal book in terms of the quality of the content it has. Doesn't mean it's the right book for most people to prepare. It certainly wasn't the right book for me. I never prepared from it because I went through it and I realized that there's one challenge on this, which is it says cracking the coding interview. There's a hint in the title, and it treats all coding interviews as though they one time.
Yeah, right.
And I knew that filtering systems are different. In any interview I'd been in the law, in management, when I was interviewing people for my startup, filtering systems are vastly different, right? So I'm like, which type of coding interview is this preparing me for, right? And that was the first question. So when you said that it's surprising that you don't necessarily use an IDE, like when I was doing the Google interview, I used a Google Doc.
Me too.
So no syntax highlighted, no foreign, right? Exactly, right? So, and sometimes different interview processes can be different even in the same company, by the way. So if you don't understand the filtering system, how are you going to prepare? And I keep telling the students, at the Inner Circle program, and this is even before you and I joined Power City and Inner Circle, but I've told my students, if you land up to a billiards tournament expecting to play snooker, you're not going to win. It may look the same. There are balls and a stick and a green velvet felt tip table, but it's a different sport. Okay. So this is the problem, that if you don't know the filtering system you're preparing for, you can't prepare. This is also why, Brian, I did not prepare for FANG out at the start. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to go straight to FANG. And I'm like, no way. First, I want to change my career. First, I want to be a software engineer, actually be inside the industry. Then I will have to have a separate plan for getting to FANG, right? And I had my learning to code and switching career coding plan was 1,000% different from my let's move to the US and aim for FANG.
Oh, that's interesting, actually. I assumed 1,000%. It was wait, how did you apply? Yeah.
I got on my bicycle. There's a Business Insider article about this, believe it or not, because I told them, I said I went old school.
Okay. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode. And the reason why a lot of people listen to this show is because they want to become a software engineer. So maybe you went to a boot camp, or maybe you're just learning to code. And maybe you want to make this the year that you actually become a software engineer. If that's you and you have the time and the dedication and you're not looking for some get-rich-quick scheme, you should join Zubin and I for a very customized program where we take you from zero through hired with an intensely personalized custom roadmap that we will help you see through step by step to get interviews, pass interviews, and learn the skills that will make you a professional grade coder. If you're serious and want to start working with us one-on-one, then schedule a call by using the show notes below or apply online at parsity.io/inner-circle. Now back to the episode.
I was like, how did we do this before LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn really got big, 2013, 2014?
That's right. Yeah.
Humanity's been around since before
This
2014.
is
How the
true.
heck did we get jobs, right? I'd been around in the workforce 11 years. I'd been in the workforce from 2003 onwards, right? My first gig was at the UN in Vienna. There was no LinkedIn then. You had to do hustle to get opportunities. I was in India and I got a role in Vienna. Hustle,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
So, and this is 2002, 2003. So, you learn how to actually go and pound the pavement. So I got on my bicycle. I identified companies that had, and a lot of them were agencies that had high attrition and lots of work.
Smart. Yeah. And so you
Because
picked these
that means
places out. You said, oh, these are places that are ripe for me to come in. And
they're looking
they're
for
looking
me.
for, yeah,
It's
right.
not just me looking for them. They're looking for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, how did I know how to do
Yeah.
this? Because of my startup that failed, right? You want to be marketing your product in a place where there's demand. There's an old marketing saying, put your product in the way of demand. Don't go and try and create demand for it. Find the existing demand and put yourself in the way. Makes
Yeah,
sense, right?
absolutely.
So that's what I did. And then I also looked at very high risk startups, because high risk startups have a lot of urgency, a lot of excitement. There's a risk appetite there. And choosing someone with no background is a risky move. So you need people who are already taking risks. One. Two, they're taking risks, but then nobody wants to take a risk on them. So established software engineers don't want to join a high risk tiny ass startup.
This is true. Yeah.
So now we have a demand problem for them. They've got a demand that's not being easily supplied. Hello, I'm willing to take a risk on you if you're willing to take a risk on me.
Damn.
Right?
Yeah. Too much.
So I just had to think like an entrepreneur and an analytical person would. And I got all four of the offers, and I chose the one with the startup. Now, why did I choose the one with the startup? Other one was agency work, which is time billing work. I'd done that for much of my legal career. I'm like, I don't want that. The pressures and dynamics of that are very different. And there's a lot less control over product, right? So again, all of this because I was 38 and I knew a bunch of things about how the world works. That's the only reason I was able to make these decisions, right? And now I teach my students how to do this. Anyway, so then I joined the startup. That was great. And then halfway through the startup, I said, okay, I've done this. I'm no longer tied to Australia because I'm no longer a lawyer, and lawyers are tied to the country because of the licensing.
Oh, okay.
To go to the US, I'd have to requalify and stuff. So when I moved as a lawyer from India to Australia, I had to requalify here in Australia.
Okay.
And so on. So you're kind of for good reason, because you need to be licensed to practice the country, right? And so I'm like, okay, my ex-wife and I like, shall we just move to California? We've always wanted to do this. I'm like, great. Now I can do this. So I will now set the plan. And I spent 3 months researching and 6 months studying. And just so everyone really, really gets this about the luck piece and how no matter how much preparation you do, there's no guarantees in life. I failed the meta interview. In fact, I don't even think I made it past this. I can't remember now. I think I may have made it past. No, I think I made it past the phone screen. But then the very first interview, I think very quickly they realized I didn't have the skills they wanted. Right. Okay. So I figured, okay, if these guys are going to be that particular about the kind of people they want, it can't be only about the technical. And so obviously you dig into it, right? Now you have to clear the technical round to get to the other rounds, but then you start to play to your strengths. Now the big question that I know you and other people are thinking as well, how did you prepare for the technical round? If you did only 30, 40% of algo expert, right? Yeah. So all of this background to show that it's not just about the technical. You have to think about the game and the filtering strategies and how to get the interview before you, like you said, what's the point of preparing for an interview you don't have, right? And you don't know how to get it. If you don't know how to get it, you're wasting time on the wrong problem, right? Okay. So once I knew I was going to start getting these interviews, or rather I had a plan for generating these interviews, because again, I'm in Australia and I want to interview in the US, right? So I had a plan for getting these interviews. In parallel, I had to prepare for them on the assumption that I was going to get them. And it goes back to kind of what you were saying about pattern recognition. Now, I didn't know this back then, but the one thing that helped me was what Charlie Munger, now the late Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner, it's books like this one, The Great Mental Models. This came out more recently, but they're books on thinking mental models that I've been a psychology student for 12 years. And it turns out that it's very hard to say what will succeed. It's very easy to say what will fail. So one way to optimize for success is to pick the thing that's going to fail and then do the opposite.
That's a very interesting take. And
yeah, it's called inversion thinking.
Okay.
Right? It's a mathematical principle. So you can solve algebraic formulas by inverting certain assumptions. Okay. So inversion thinking is a mental model.
Mhm.
So I said, all right, what is it that really, really helped made me fail when I was, spending 5 years trying to learn to code or whatever, and not succeeding for 4 out of them? And I realized I was jumping around and I didn't know what I was doing. And so I'd guess and then switch, guess and then switch. So I said, okay, what would the opposite of that be? Is whether you like it or not, don't switch.
And when you say guess and switch, do you mean like a platform of studying or a specific?
Everything. Do I want to learn JavaScript? Do I want to learn
Okay.
Python? Do I want to learn Android? Do I want to learn from Brian? Do I want to learn from Cold Steel? Do I want to learn from, Sebastian Thierry? Whatever.
Sure.
Like, it's all that, who do I think? And there was no social media influencing back, not at this scale, back in 2018, 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
So for me, it was pretty simple. I eliminated all the noise and I found people. This is research. I found people who had done what I was trying to do, and I ignored everybody else. And if these people didn't talk to me, I would not use that as a reason to go and listen to some horseshit. If they didn't talk to me, they didn't talk to me. Full stop.
Yeah.
It wasn't a reason to go and try and find some other information from just because it is easier to access.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they didn't talk to me, they didn't talk to me.
Okay.
Find somebody else who's done what you want to do. And this is why I keep telling our students, if you're taking advice, take it from someone who's done exactly what you're trying to do. Everybody else is just pure opinion and noise. Okay. So you and I have done the career change thing. That's why we have such a strong philosophy in it, and we can help people do it, because learning to code is not the hard bit. The career change is really hard. So at this point in time, I was like, okay, so pick and stick was my motto, right?
Okay.
Pick and stick.
I like it.
So when I was doing the data structures and algorithms preparation, I'm like, okay, first and foremost, they're two some completely different things. Now we club them together because the industry clubbed them together, right? But they're two completely different things. Okay. So start at, now Algo Expert does this quite well, and all of them do this well. LeetCode, all the others.
LeetCode, there's a bunch of products out there nowadays.
There's 300 of them now. So now when the 300 of them, the pick and stick philosophy becomes more important. Because here's the thing, reversing a linked list is the same regardless of whether Zubin teaches you or, I don't know, LeetCode teaches you. The algorithm doesn't change. The principles don't change. Dijkstra's algorithm was invented in the 50s when Dijkstra sat in a cafe and it suddenly came to him. It does not change.
Yeah.
It is the same thing whether you do it off YouTube or you do it off data structures. By the way, it's the same principle for Python, right? So everything in this book is exactly what's there in the manual, in the official docs.
Oh, in the official
exactly
Python documentation. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Any YouTube video will not be violating stuff that says in this. Why? Because Python is the language. It's got rules, and the transpiler has to follow those rules. And so Python is Python, regardless of who you learn it from. Just like the English that Zubin will teach, or the letters of the alphabet in Zubin's English alphabet, is the same as Brian's English alphabet. It cannot change based on the teaching.
Better not change.
Right. So pick and stick was my philosophy. So I started with Algo Expert, and I said I will refuse to change. And I also stayed off the free things. Here's why. Psychologically, again, because of my interest in psychology, I know this, you are more likely to follow through on things that you paid for than the things you don't, even if it's the same.
Oh, yeah. I think people know this intuitively, but maybe not, because I've kind of figured this out. I'm like, I've tried to give away stuff for free, and I realized barely anybody even takes it, goes through it or anything. The moment people pay for it, they're much more likely to engage with it. And I'm in the same way. We all are. I mean, that's, you know this, I guess, better than all. I don't know much about human psychology, but I just knew this intuitively. Like, if I pay for something, I'm going to feel more obligated to do the thing.
And I think some of us get it intuitively because we've had the opportunity to observe it in ourselves. And we're like, this seems to be like a human thing. But I think there's so much noise on social media these days. Like, this decade is crazy. And especially after COVID, people have gotten completely addicted to their feeds.
Yeah.
And I think people just don't have the space to reflect on their own actions. And, everything's free. Yeah. So pick and stick. It'll take the time it takes. And the third thing is consistency. Do it whether you feel like it or not, which is what we tell our students today. Right?
Yeah.
Now, you can only do this if you know yourself really well. So I know when I'm stressed at work, I am less likely to be motivated by my dreams. Mm-hmm. On a good day, I'm motivated by everything.
Yeah.
Right. So one of my favorite principles was from, I forgot her name, Natasha something, but is you can quit on any day as long as it's a good day.
I like that.
One of my favorite maxims.
It took me a minute to think about that. That's a good one.
pick and stick or inversion thinking. These are small ideas.
Yeah, these are
right, that
tiny
you
little
can get from
pivots that make a massive change.
over life.
Yeah,
They can
absolutely.
change your entire life.
Yeah.
A single idea can change your entire life, right? How much is that worth? You combine all these things together. You invest your time, you invest your money, you invest your attention. You do the opposite of things that fail because you'll never know what actually succeeds. That's not knowable. But you know what fails. Do the opposite. I know that driving a motorcycle when completely drunk, I don't need drink, but if I were to drink, driving a motorcycle when completely drunk is a high odds of death scenario.
Yes.
All I've got to do is do the opposite. Does that mean I'm never going to die in a road accident? No.
But
it just dramatically increases my odds of staying alive.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That's inversion thinking. Do the thing. You know the thing that doesn't work, do the opposite. Right? And you stack enough of those and you win. So that's kind of what I did. I did about 40% of Algo Expert, and it just so happened that the timing of the interviews came forward. But going back to what you quite brilliantly said earlier, if you recognize the patterns, then the trick is, even if you don't know how to solve the problem, is to tell the interviewer which pattern it is.
Yeah.
Right? I have correctly classified and categorized this nature of problem. These are the principles that generally apply to this nature of problem. I'm going to endeavor to solve it. It's not uncommon to not solve it in 40 minutes. 40 minutes is not a lot of time to solve complex problems, especially if you don't have an IDE.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if you do, it could be, and you're nervous, and there's, I've been on coding interviews where I'm coding live, and somebody's, I can hear them breathe in my cans, right? And we're going live for 2 hours, and I know they're looking over my shoulder on the screen, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? So that
stressful.
So yeah, it's hard. Yeah. And so controlling your psychology, I've worked very hard on psychology because Michael Jordan, one of them said, right, it's very, no matter how much practice you have, if you let your mind get away from you on the court, you will lose. Right? Why do presidents, sports people, CEOs have mindset coaches? Because how you think in the moment of heat.
Yeah.
Heck, ask any cop in the street; they'll tell you this. Right?
Oh yeah.
How you think in the moment of heat is going to decide everything in that moment. So if you're going to choke up in the interview, which is natural, that's a psychology principle. That's not a coding thing.
Right? It took me forever to realize that, actually. Yeah, that was a big thing for me. I've had panic attacks, if I'm being, to be honest, since I used to drink a lot. And when I stopped drinking, they dramatically decreased. But they still come up sometimes. And I'm also caffeine sensitive, which I didn't realize. Yeah. So I have this high caffeine sensitivity. Went to an interview and I have a full blown panic attack during the interview. And I have to tell the person I thought I was having a heart condition because I have had a heart condition. So anyway, all these things are happening.
So you actually have racing heart, palpitation, shortness of breath, all of that.
Yeah. And I've been to the hospital before for an actual heart thing. So it's even more, because then you're thinking, wait, is it my mind or is it real? Or is this really and so I'm freaking out on this phone call. I have to tell the person, hey, I'm really sorry. I have to compose myself. And I'm thinking I've blown, right? The interview's over. I luckily get the job, but it taught me a lot about going into an interview. One, for me, don't have caffeine before the interview. Two, understand what's going to be asked. And then three was doing a lot of practice, because I realized, maybe similar to what you said, is that I realized that why is an interview unique? Because it's unique. It's not something you normally do. If I skydived every day, it would be boring, because I would do it every day. Yeah. I thought, how do I make an interview boring? And I want to desensitize myself to it. So I would just do them all the time. And I still kind of follow that philosophy.
1,000%.
How did you get over your nerves? For you, I mean, everybody has nerves. I suspect you're much more calm than I am under pressure. But what did you do to prepare mentally for these interviews as well?
I think I just detached from the outcome, and this is my spiritual belief, but I'm a big fan of something called the Bhagavad Gita, which is this old Indian spiritual text, but it's sort of religion agnostic, but it comes from the Hindu tradition. But it's about the fact that we control so little, right? And accepting that. And accepting that that's true for everybody. It's not like your competitor controls more than you. It looks like that, but it's not true. A lot of things we just can't control. And one of the key factors we can't control on the day, there are two factors. We can't control what interviewer we get. Actually, there are three. We can't control the interviewer we get.
Yeah.
We can't control the question they choose to ask. And we can't control the competition that shows up. Now, when you think about it, that's 90% of what the interview is about.
Yeah.
What does that leave? It leaves you.
Yeah, you're right.
The only thing you can attempt to control is your prep, your to the best of your ability, your performance in that moment, and then how you handle the fallout, both the success and the failure, right? And the failure is just one. So before sort of we close this topic out, I want people to realize this. I had applied as a lawyer to Google 2 or 3 times and never got in. Didn't get interviews in my profession. And I was in one of the top law firms in the world. I then applied randomly as a product manager after I'd left the law and I was doing the startup thing. And I got through, I think, maybe the penultimate one, maybe not the final, I think the penultimate one. But I had no product management experience. I just had an MBA behind me, right? And my startup. And then when it came to engineering, got it the first try. Here's why. Now, okay, I applied in 3 completely different professions.
Yes, for sure.
And weirdly, the one that I had was most qualified for, I got 0 runs. And the ones that I was kind of qualified for, I got somewhere. And then the one that I really intentionally set my goal to. So, a couple of things. The average person in a FANG company who's in a FANG company has applied, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the stat is 3.6 times.
Yep, I've heard this.
And typically they benched after they don't succeed. So 3.6 times is 4 years. Because typically you're made to wait out 12 months, 6 to 12 months, but usually 12 months before you can try again if you didn't make it through an interview round. Okay, right. So 3.6 means 4 years of waiting. Okay, that kind of accords with my journey because, okay, over 8 years, I tried 4 or 5 times, whatever, fine. Every time you get rejected, and this is what do we teach our students? You're going to fail, so make use of it. You're going to fail, so make use of it. Don't waste a good failure.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Just don't waste a good failure. Get better every time. Right. So every interview, I was inching a little bit closer, even though it was a completely different domain, because I'd understood how Google, what they're looking for, what kind of principles they follow, how their hiring works, how to just be less nervy in the interview. And here's the big thing: no matter what the interview is, even if they're a douchebag, and let me be very clear, I've had really douchey interviewers.
Oh yeah.
I've shadowed douchey interviewers in different jobs. And there've been so many times and I'm shadowing an interview and saying, if I had this person, I would not have made it.
Oh, yeah. That's, for sure. I've interviewed at the same company and thought, damn, this is my interview. I wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here, right? So, of course, luck matters on the day. You have a good vibe with the interviewer. They're more collaborative. Like you had somebody who's willing to collaborate with you. I've seen people saying they ought to know that. And so I'm going to dock them on the, on the,
for sure.
What do you mean they ought to know that?
It's so subjective and it's
so subjective.
And I think once you get out of big tech, you see that there's way less formality in the structure of the interview. It's like, I think people think that everybody has like traditional style or people are coming up with these like really formal rubrics on grading people. And it's sometimes it's just some dude. They're just like, yeah, here's how we're going to interview.
Yeah. And here's the thing, if you have people in the company who are ex-FANG,
oh yeah,
and you have hiring practices that are ex-FANG, you will start to see it, even if they don't need it.
Yeah.
Right? They will start doing it. Because we look, to a carpenter, everything looks like a nail, right? Like to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So when they know the tool, they'll use the tool. So that's another thing. You got to figure out who in the company, how the hiring process in the company has evolved. And if you don't do the due diligence and understanding of how the hiring works, you can't prepare. You'll end up at the billiards tournament expecting to play snooker, and then you're in trouble. Right. And I've counted 9 to 14 different types of coding interview. If you don't even know what type of coding interview you're preparing for, how are you preparing? Like baseball and cricket both involve bats and balls, vastly different games. Like vastly different games, right? So you have to know what you're doing. So yeah, that's kind of how you prepare for it. And fundamentally, I think social media does a lot of disservice to people. I spoke to someone yesterday, said, I'm a bit sick of this narrative about become a software engineer in 3 months. I'm like, how long does it take to be a policeman in New York? It's about, I think, 7 or 8 months. I'm like, come on, it's common sense. How can you possibly get professional grade skills at any, if I said you're going to be a tennis player in 4 months, would you believe it? No. Like,
you want to believe
why
it.
Is engineering? Yeah, you want to believe it. That's completely different. And social media exploits that. They exploit your need for believing things are possible a certain way, without pain, without effort, rapidly, on your schedule, with no risk, for free.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Like, yeah, come on. Like, let's use just a tad. That's common sense here, just a bit.
It's common sense. It's common sense. And, when I say, come on, use your common sense, people are like, don't be condescending. And I'm like, okay, fair point. I see why that could come across.
You're right. Yeah.
It's common sense.
But it is common sense, God dang it.
It is common sense. But, if I guess if I was 22
I'll give you a
And
pass.
since
If you're a kid or you got to, I'll give you a pass. If you're 30, come on,
no,
man.
yeah, correct.
Yeah.
If you haven't grown up in the last 5 years, if you haven't attained the age of majority in the last 5 years, and you've been an adult for longer than that, then you can't use social media as an
Yeah.
excuse because you've kind of seen the world before that as well. So yeah. So that was that, man. That was the Google journey.
Dude, hell of a journey. And
Hell of a
thank
journey.
you for sharing that, because a lot of this was not information that I thought about. Like I was thinking purely technical, but I think you're right. There's so much information about the technical portion that all of this is what people probably need to hear a lot more of. And I know you have some articles too, if people are really interested in the technical portion, and they'll be pinned to this episode as well if you want to check it out.
Yeah, and the technical portion has been covered ad nauseum. So
Yeah.
if you pick and stick, you'll be fine. Like it's the same thing, right? It's ABCD, whether you learn it from me or Brian or anyone else. But how do you, in your circumstances, in your city, with your background and your educational history, your work history, do you have kids? Do you not have kids? How much time do you have? Do you have a health issue? What is your goal? If you don't understand and factor in all these things, it doesn't matter what you do on the technical side, because you're just going to be really literate with no opportunities.
Hey, dude, thanks again. And if you do want to become a software engineer and maybe not get into Google, but maybe have a wonderful career in the other 99% of companies, join us at parsity.io/inner-circle. Thanks again, Zubin.
Thank you, Brian.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.